Thank you for joining us. This is Film Talk Weekly, and I'm Castle Searcy with the Santa Fe International Film Festival. Today I'm here with Dylan Glockler, cinematographer. Is that the correct title for you?
Yep.
I know you do
Yep.
many other things, and we're going to get to that. Where are you right now?
I'm in Fort Lauderdale right now, just
Are
back
you
from the West Coast.
are you on a boat?
Not currently, but I live on a boat, but I'm not currently on the boat. The boat's in shipyard, so
Okay, where it belongs. Yeah.
yeah, it's where it spends a lot of time, way more time than it should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dylan, I mean, I guess the first thing we're gonna get to what you're working on and well, what would people know you from? Let's start with that. And then
Um,
we're gonna dig into your past.
sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the biggest things I've worked on, I worked in smaller capacities on a movie with Nicole Kidman called Rabbit Hole, and then I worked on a which was based on an Australian book by the same title. And then I worked on a movie with Amanda Seyfried and Peter Sarsgaard um, called Lovelace.
Lovelace.
Yeah, about Linda Lovelace. And so for that, I did the behind the scenes making of extra features that you see if you have the opportunity. So interviewed all the actors and cut that together. And but then I've also done a number of features as cinematographer. Doctor Who Am I, Bar America, and Your Good Friend are three features that are very small independent productions, but we're passion projects and we're a lot of fun. So
And
those are
oh,
my
go ahead.
main my main feature productions, and then lots of other like smaller productions. And then the stuff I'm working on now is television, was started off in the television world and has evolved into a traveling live documentary series.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah,
For
unusual.
those listening, Dylan and I are both wearing red shirts today, and we did not plan it. If you're watching us streaming, you can see that.
Yes.
Dylan, how did you get started? Did you always want to be a filmmaker, or like what was your path? A lot of what we talk about on the show is the the path that people take
hmm
to making it in the film industry, which I would say you are. So, how did you get here? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I started off with my parents' giant, VHS camcorder, using Matchbox cars and doing animations,
Oh,
stop,
really?
start, and lighting them
Okay.
on fire, and stuffed animals and GI Joes and all that. So a lot of stop animation back then, and then evolved into doing Macbeth adaptations of Indiana Jones with my dad's Jeep and pyrotechnics that he arranged, and swinging over the creek on a zip line. And so carried that on to college and did a little bit of journalism while I studied business. And then went off and did internet related stuff, business, and then went to grad school finally in a little bit later in life and got a master's in cinematography and started to focus in on that. And that's when I did the productions, the larger productions. I got internships for those, um, and then some work, and worked in a little bit of television, and then started doing my own projects through connections that I made through various projects and things. So it was just a long slow development cycle that's evolved into where I am now.
Can we get our hands on any of the films you made as a child?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Doctor Who Am I is available for sure streaming. That's the most recent documentary. It's a documentary about the fandom around the Doctor Who series. So we
Oh,
went to a
oh, I
number of
meant the ones of you
conventions.
swinging on a vine.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, yeah.
I just found the VHS tape, but man, VHS does not hold up very well. So
Uh,
I just found a copy of it, but it's staticky, and it's it's awesome though.
yeah,
Especially, my dad is the cameraman, and when the witches disappear in the smoke, he's like coughing and the camera's moving, and then the
yeah,
smoke fades away and you can see people sneaking out. It's quite comedic.
yeah. One day they'll be
Interesting.
showing that, like when they're
Yeah.
presenting an award to you, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, where did you go to film school?
Academy of Art University in San Francisco.
Okay, I'm in San
Mhm.
Francisco right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great city. We
yeah.
were just there. I was there for the project I'm working on currently, the called Defining Courage. That just showed at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. which was, pretty nice venue, pretty epic venue for the San Francisco area.
Do they have
And
a
just before that,
movie theater?
they have a theater in the back, yeah, or they have a theater. It has a full proscenium and it holds about 1,000 people. And we had a pretty sold out show. So it was, yeah, it's a neat environment, although the weather was awful. So we didn't get to enjoy the spaces outside around the Palace of Fine Arts, but the theater itself is excellent. Great staff, great facility.
So I want to talk about this project. Tell me again. It's called.
Defining Courage.
Okay.
It started out as a series for ABC News. The person that I work with on that project, David Ono, he's the anchor for ABC News in Los Angeles. He started doing a series. He's Japanese American. He started doing a series on Japanese American soldiers from World War II whose families were incarcerated while they were sent off to war. And of course, the stories are varied and dramatic, as you can imagine. Some some of them, these were red-blooded American kids. They just happened to look Japanese. They call them Nisei. They were second generation. Their parents moved over, and they were second generation. And a lot of them, lived the American life in either Hawaii or California primarily. Um, and then when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they, they felt like they wanted to go off and fight. And a lot of them, some of them were already soldiers in the army. A lot of them ran out and signed up, but then their families ended up being incarcerated and they weren't allowed to serve initially until later in the war when they started to run out of other soldiers and the army got desperate. They put them in a segregated fighting unit. So that's what these stories began as, and then they've evolved into what is now basically a feature-length documentary. And David started showing it and doing the narration live with recorded music. And through the encouragement of the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles and other amazing people, they encouraged him to develop it into a broader show. And Disney and ABC and kind of insisted that the music be original music for licensing reasons. So they wrote their own music. They cast these amazing singers and got world-class musicians, and now they show it at various theaters around the country, performed live. So the video is shown, the narration is done, the music is performed, and then I, as the technical director, I run the switcher and switch the video and integrate all the pieces together. So
So it started as an episode
It
and now
started
it's a
off
documentary?
it started off as news stories that actually
Okay.
won a few Emmys in
Okay.
Los Angeles area Emmys, which was cool. And then and then people kept saying, we'd love to see some pieces of this. So David they cut it together into a presentation. We showed it at the National Army Museum, for example, at the opening of the National Army Museum in Washington, D.C. And people were so moved by it, they kept encouraging him to develop it further and develop it further. And then, it got to the point where, again, they had to produce their own music. So they brought in an amazing music organizer and composer and wrote all their own songs and ended up putting it together and showing it at various theaters. And most recently, it played at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
for
wow.
Veterans Day this last year. So yeah, amazing music producer Chris Wade, was his name, and he's been working on it for some time.
So it's David Ono. Is that what you
David Ono is the producer and the host of the show. Jeff McIntyre was a producer who worked on it some as well. He was doing the technical directing, and now I've taken that over. And Chris Wade is the music director who has been working with all the amazing musicians from East Coast and West Coast. They kind of pull people in from all over, and they've had some really amazing musicians as well. They usually have a pianist and a cellist and a violin, all performing the music live. And there's a excuse me, there's a documentary that Disney produced, Disney and ABC produced, and you can find that on Hulu, which I think I sent the link to you earlier. But that's a pretty uh, interesting piece because you see a little bit behind the scenes and the way it was put together, and some shots from the theater, the Segerstrom Theater in Costa Mesa, California, which is one of the locations we performed the show. A beautiful, incredible theater in California.
So it's a
Segerstrom.
documentary about the live show.
Yeah, it's funny. It's very meta.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah.
documentary about the documentary
Okay.
that's
And
performed live.
and what's that called? How do people find that?
The it's called it's on a series called Watch Our America, and it's episode 25, I think, season one, episode 25. It's called Defining Courage. Um, Our America Defining Courage is the name of the episode.
Okay, so
So it's
that
streaming
is,
on Hulu, Our America.
and that's to
So
see the movie about the movie or the documentary about the
yeah,
story.
if you search for
Okay.
Defining Courage on Hulu, it pops right up.
Okay.
Our America Defining Courage is that
Okay.
series. And a lot of the stories, the original stories, are still on the ABC News website and various places as well. But to see it put together the way we do the show is really compelling because often, and in with less frequency as we go forward, at the end of the show we bring out a group of veterans, Nisei veterans, some of the same people at times that we interviewed in the battlefields where they fought in Europe. That was part of the project. I did a lot of the filming in Europe, and we traveled to Europe with some of the veterans and walked through the forest with them and their families to see the foxholes still there, and pieces of shrapnel and metal, as they returned to this battlefield for the first time.
Wow.
And not long after that, that particular veteran passed away just after we filmed that piece. So, capturing those stories is really
And
a
really
fleeting
important.
moment right now
Yes.
because these guys are in their hundreds. So the
Right.
last show we did in San Francisco, we had 7 or 8 veterans on stage at the end of the show. Everybody's, singing "God Bless America," I think it was, to them at the end, waving flags. And each after each show, we tend to lose a veteran because they're at such advanced stages now. So yeah,
Wow. And we're back with Dylan Glockler, cinematographer. You can find Dylan's work, dylanglockler.com. Should we go to your website to see?
yeah. That's a point of access. I need to update my reel, of course. It's
Now
so
you have to.
wildly out of date. Yeah,
Now you have to for the show
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yes. And IMDb, Dylan Glockler.
Mhm.
And we were just talking about your show,
Mhm.
Defining Courage. Is that the title of it?
Yeah, that's the title of the traveling show, Defining Courage.
Okay.
We
And
have a
so,
we have a nonprofit 501(c) nonprofit called Story Boldly, where we look for and produce stories on social justice and social change, and particularly, we're looking at stories on maybe the Tuskegee Airmen or other undertold stories of American military soldiers, or and things beyond military stories too. That's been sort of a big story for Story Boldly in the past, for David in the past, just from the connections he's made and the way stories evolve as a filmmaker. It's always interesting seeing how things evolve. But for him, it started as interesting news stories that came about, and then he just compiled so many that it had to be told into a larger, more intricate tale.
and so he obviously had an interest because he is a Japanese American, and
Yeah. He's Japanese American, but he personally doesn't have a tie or connection to the camps. A lot of this relates back to the camps, the
Mhm.
internment camps or the concentration camps that were put into play during World War II, where hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans were incarcerated. But yeah, he personally didn't have any family that was there, but knows so many people that did, and almost everybody who lives in these Japanese American communities knows somebody, has a friend whose grandparents were born there, or uncles or aunts or something. So
And he was working for ABC News, and they just let him do whatever stories he found or
kind
was
of, yeah.
interested in.
He does have a lot of. He's been there for I think 30 years. He just won an award for like newscaster of the year. I can't remember some major award. He gets so many awards, hard to keep track. But yeah, he's a very well-respected, long-term establishment of ABC News. And yeah, he produces a lot of his own stuff too, and brought me on to help him with some things. But he self-produces a lot of his projects, and then just brings them to ABC sometimes. And then sometimes he's like, this is outside of the blanket of ABC News. They've contributed some promotion and support. And I think actually the documentary about Defining Courage may appear on ABC News in the next few weeks, or not ABC News, sorry, may broadcast on ABC affiliate channels across the country in the next few weeks. I just remembered that.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Yeah, they were talking
that
about
will.
buying up or opening up slots for it, and showing it nationwide. So
Oh, cool.
you might see that around. Yeah.
So, how did you meet David? Like, I'm always interested in the connections, like
Yeah.
how these
I
things happen.
Yeah, sure. On graduate school, I worked very closely with a woman by the name of Vanessa Ewell, a very talented filmmaker who lives in Los Angeles now. And she was working on a thesis project about Heart Mountain Relocation Facility, which is where her mother was born. So I traveled with her out to Wyoming, and we shot a piece about her learning about the story of her mother being born in this relocation camp. We interviewed a lot of people, and it was it's a great short documentary called American Contradiction. And a couple of years after graduate school, I was in Florida at the time, and she had gone to the Heart Mountain. They have these gatherings at the relocation facilities, because a lot of them are building centers to try to preserve the memory of these experiences. And she had gone back from one of those meetings where people gather, and she met David, who was doing a story there. And they got to talking, and he was doing an interview out in Florida, and he needed somebody local to shoot that. So he reached out. I shot that, and then I happened to be back in Los Angeles, and he was going to do the shots in Europe for these other news stories. So I started going with him to Europe, and then went with him to Japan to shoot some stories on Fukushima national disaster. And so we just started developing a relationship over time, doing projects, and he was really happy with the outcome of the shooting that I was doing. I would try to push the envelope a little bit from the traditional news narratives that they tend to do, and try
Mhm.
to make something, employing some tactics that were a little more rich. A lot of times I think their news production teams do an amazing job, but they're working on such schedules to turn stuff over. And I think that's one of the reasons that he produces his own stuff, is that he's able to slow down, take his time, and do really, well thought out, detailed stories, which is why he's won like countless Emmys and Edward R. Murrow awards and all these things. Um, so yeah, I just started, you know, going with him on different projects around the world, and developing a relationship long term.
Yeah, I see like a consistent thread with people that like work in creative industries, especially like you just never know who you're going to meet and
Mhm.
like, stay in touch with and be a nice person to work with and.
Yeah, this is a good story. The relationship that I had, they got me the two big movies that I worked on, Lovelace and Rabbit Hole. So those are, Nicole Kidman and big Hollywood movies, and those are productions in New York and Los Angeles. Big sets and great experiences, really amazing experiences. I got those connections by I was going to a film festival closing party in Seattle with a friend of mine, and he said, "Oh, this crazy party is happening for this film festival. We want to swing by." So we went inside, and there was a hole in this wall. There were all these performance artists going on. There was this hole in this wall that said "Enter here." So we crawled this hole, and we came out between some legs into a room where a drag queen was singing "Name That Tune" karaoke.
Hmm.
like we were birthed into the room. And the drag queen asked, "Do you have any songs you'd like to?" And she had a book, and we're flipping through the book. And I said, "Do you know any Hedwig?" Because Hedwig had just come out, Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Uh-huh.
And so this guy in the corner kind of scoffed at it and laughed. And she's like, "No, I don't really know what that is." Well, about an hour later, we're standing in a circle talking to some people, and it turns out that was Stephen Trask who wrote Hedwig.
Oh my
So
God.
so I met him and we hung out. I kind of showed him around Seattle that weekend and sat with him at the back of the theater when they were showing his movie at the film festival, and we became good friends. And then a little while later, after as I was finishing up film school, I reached out to him and he said, "I'm working on this movie. I have friends working on this other movie." So he got those connections for me. And the movie on Lovelace, he just reached out to the director who was the cinematographer, who was the same cinematographer that worked on Hedwig, and said, "I have this friend who's finishing up film school. He'd love to do an internship." And they were just like, "Yep, send him down." And I
Wow.
showed up on set and worked every day of that production. And
Wow.
then for Lovelace, uh, he reached out to the directors who are Academy Award winning directors, Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein and sorry, Rob Epstein and Jeffrey Friedman.
Oh no, wasn't
um,
isn't Jeffrey Epstein the bad one?
yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right? That's why I'm like, I got to be more careful about that.
Right, right. We
Yeah.
probably could edit that
Rob
out.
Epstein and Jeffrey
Yeah.
Friedman. Yeah, don't cross the names. Um, it's definitely not Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've worked together for so many years. I crossed the names. Not good to do.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, but they won Academy Awards for The Times of Harvey Milk and another film, and amazing directors, and they had this incredible film they were working on, Lovelace, and same thing. Stephen reached out to them and said, "I have a friend who's finishing up film school," and they said, "Yeah, have him come down." And then I think they looked at my reel and they said, "Well, why don't maybe what you could do is shoot the behind the scenes, making of kind of thing." And I said, "That sounds great." And they said, "Well, just go for it. You have a free
Oh,
pass to the set, do whatever you need to do." So
cool.
I showed up when and where I felt like it and shot behind the scenes and got some footage from them, from the production house, and started editing at the end of it and cut it all together. Got the music from Steven and went to the recordings of with the orchestra doing the sound production at that was at the Lucasfilm production facility out there in Marin. So a lot of really amazing opportunities just working on those sets just from a happenstance experience crawling into a hole in a wall.
That is like happenstance. It's like magic, really. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like being in the right place at the right time and saying the right thing or knowing the right thing?
Yeah.
Like,
Being open to the experience, being open
yeah,
to meeting people. Yeah. You never know who somebody is. Here's this
it's
quirky
so
guy standing in the corner laughing, and he happens to be an incredibly talented filmmaker and or musician and songwriter. So
and so generous of him to like
yeah.
take you under his wing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know who you're gonna meet. That is like a
Yeah. And we're
definite.
still friends. I just bumped into him in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, just
Oh,
walking
cool.
down the street, and it was like,
Oh, you're
what?
kidding. Like
No,
just
yeah.
randomly. This is
Hmm.
magic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break
Sure.
again for these messages. This is Castle Searcy with Santa Fe International Film Festival, talking with Dylan Glockler. And we're back with Dylan Glockler. Thanks for joining us. This is Castle Searcy with the Santa Fe International Film Festival. And we were talking about how you broke into the business, some of the ways that I mean, you went to film school, but then things happen along the way. Like, it's not so easy
Hmm.
to just go to film school and you just go get a job, right? I think we all know that in the film world.
Yeah.
Um,
And not
and
everybody
I,
goes to film school too.
right, not
A lot
at
of people are
all.
very successful without nofilmschool.com.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many ways. And I think from my experience and people I know, it's relationships.
Yeah.
But also you were in a film festival. You went to a film festival is where you met Stephen Trask.
Hmm.
And, film fests are a great way to meet people, meet people in the industry. learn about the industry? And I mean, what else did you do? You went to school?
But prior to going to school, way back when, before, there's so much social media and stuff now, but in the old days we used, things like Craigslist, which now is just creepy, I think, but it kind of was then too, maybe. But I remember, it must have been 20 years or more ago. I I think I posted, I might have responded to the posting. I can't remember which of us, but basically somebody in the Olympia area posted, Olympia, Washington, posted, interested in making films, looking for like-minded people. Let's meet for coffee, basically. And two others responded, and the three of us got together, and it was myself, and two guys from Olympia, Washington, um, and Jeff Barehand and and sorry, my mind's blanking. Riley, Jeff and Riley. So we all got together at a coffee shop and started chatting about film, and one thing led to another, and we started a little organization called olyfilm.com. I ended up going off to film school and everything, so I kind of disappeared and dropped off the scene, but they really kept it going, and I've helped them with projects over the years. In fact, I've gone back for weeks at a time to Washington just to shoot short films with them and work on projects with them, um, and yeah, and now it's grown up into a much larger organization. I'm not sure how big it is, but the two others that were at that little meeting started a production company together called Sky Bear Media, and they do a lot of, because one of them is Native American, there in the Washington area. He he does a lot of work with the tribes up there, working at there's a projects they do every year for the casino organization, and they've done programs with kids, native kids, to learn how to tell stories through the medium of film. Um, yeah, so you never know, like a little coffee meeting 20 years ago, and now it's this organization, and a whole business grew out of it, because I think the two of them actually met there at that
Wow.
coffee meeting. So
Wow.
yeah, now they have a very successful business. And they just bought a building in Olympia that has a studio in it, and kind of the premier production facility in that area of the state. So
And
yeah,
how do we find them? Is it Oli Film?
olyfilm.com, Olyfilm. Really
Okay.
cool organization, and they've got some great films on there. If you look at their filmography, I've worked on a couple of the films there. One of them was actually, the website is scrolling through here, and my pictures on a bunch of stuff on there, I see. So behind the scenes production stuff, but there's one on there called Where I'm Calling From that I'm really proud of. It was a period piece, and it was so neat because everybody from the community all got together. These amazing people pulled up in this panel truck full of furniture. A local guy don't let us use this beautiful old craftsman house. He was one of the actors, actually. We cleared out his house and replaced it with all this period furniture, and we got lights, big real professional lights back then. That was like HMI, you know casting through the window, and good quality lenses, and everybody just kind of came together as this in this small community. Local restaurants bringing us food while we're working, and it was really, really neat. And the story came from the widow of a local poet. His name is escaping me right now, but he's fairly famous. He was kind of in that 1950s era of sort of beatnik poets and writers who revolutionized writing at that time. So we had actual permission to use that book to do that adaptation from her, and we end up bringing her in and doing a special screening for her at a local Tacoma theater, which was really cool too.
And this is all before film school, or you did
And
this?
that was all, yeah, before, and some of it during, but yeah, yeah,
So that kind of helped you make your decision, probably, if you were thinking about film. Like you were definitely into it. Like,
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. All part of the process. Actually, I think that was just after film school. Yeah,
Okay.
that we did the Where I'm Calling From and some of those things. And the Sky Bear Media, the guys' production company that they created, I've sent them work from clients that I've had, and they've sent me work. David Ono, who I worked with ABC News, was going up to Seattle to do something. Instead of me flying out there, I just called them up and they met up with him there and shot that for him. It's great to develop those relationships and have those networking opportunities. And so, yeah.
Um, I mean, I feel like you have from the few projects I've heard about outside of like Lovelace and Rabbit Hole, like your passion projects seem to be telling untold stories of
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely the, the defining courage is that for sure. Um, for me as a cinematographer, a lot of it is the directors that I'm working with and what their projects are. And, I do have a few of my own little pocket projects I've worked on, that I've been working on in the past, um, but mostly those are driven by the producers and the directors that I'm working with. So,
mhm.
um, I'm kind of my big thing is trying to be committed to executing the vision of the director. I have my ideas for how it's going to look, but it really is a collaborative process, and I find it very compelling and important for me to understand what their vision is and to help them realize that through the technical process and the materials and the tools that I've practiced and worked with. So
I think you have to be a kind, empathetic person for the subject matter to, to be able to do that, to complete the
yeah.
vision. So,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, one of the directors I worked with, I remember I overheard him talking about the way that I work to somebody else. And it was something about being quiet and still. Like I am a pretty introverted person and I'm a kind of a quiet person. And that's what compelled him to work with me. And we did two features with me as cinematographer, where Your Good Friend, which was a quirky uh, a quirky story about a rabbi and a pornographer who become unlikely friends.
mhm.
So it's a cute little movie. And then Doctor Who Am I, and Bar America. Those three movies I worked with him, and he just liked the way that I didn't try to push my agenda. I was always looking for ways to understand his vision and understand the story and finding the best ways to tell that story. And, on a ultra small budget too, to do it within the context of what we have available is a big key. That's probably the hardest thing.
Mhm.
Some of
Well,
those
sometimes
budgets were,
I like working in constraints sometimes. Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
forces you to get creative and like
Yeah, even big giant production. I can't remember which director it was. It was just a huge movie. Um, can't remember what movie it was. And the director kept telling the cinematographer, you can use as many lights as you want as long as it's one.
right.
So that was the thing. They used almost no lighting on the whole production. I think it might have been the creator, or I know in that movie they used very few lights. But there's a few, the technology's gotten good enough now and the sensors are, you know, good enough that you can do so much with so little.
Right.
And sometimes it can be freeing to sort of cast aside all that excess
It's too
production.
much. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
like too much,
yeah,
like if
yeah,
you can have everything.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Especially those big productions, man. Just,
mhm.
I mean, I've seen that stuff. Like, here's a quick story. We're shooting with Nicole Kidman the movie Rabbit Hole, and she has to run out, and she's just seen her child get run over in the street. Very dramatic,
Mm.
very difficult for an actor to perform
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And she comes out, and they've rented a Phantom 1,000 frames a second camera to do ultra slow motion, so we catch every second of it. And she comes out, and the focus puller is having trouble because there isn't enough light and they have the aperture wide open and the depth of field is so narrow. Even though she's quite a ways away, they're not getting good focus. So they do it one time, two times, three times. And Nicole Kidman's getting stressed. She can't keep doing this performance over and over. It's
Right.
losing it. And They're like, I can't think we got, yeah, I think we got it. I think we got it. And they go back and look and they didn't have it. It wasn't in focus. So the next day they decide we're going to reshoot that scene one time. We're going to get it. And I walk out and it's that day before had been gray and dark. And that's why it was so difficult. So we walk out now. It's a bright sunny day and they have 12 of what they call parkan, 12 parkans. So they've got like, I think six of them around. So basically like more light than the sun and the sun is out. And of course she does it and they got it and it's sharp, no problem at all. But,
Mm-hmm.
they over prepared for that moment because they had to. They just, they didn't want to have any chance of not being able to get that focus.
Right.
Stressful moment, but
Yeah. Uh, you, being an introvert, what's it like working with like these star-studded casts on Rabbit Hole? I mean, it's like huge, like star-studded casts, Rabbit Hole and Lovelace.
Lovelace, yeah. Yeah, those were, there was we had, Lovelace had quite a cast too. Trying to remember who else was on it.
I
Uh,
recognize like everyone. Yeah.
yeah, there was quite a list of people, all super, super nice. One of the greatest things about that film, both the two big production films I worked on had incredible directors who were wonderfully kind people. Lovelace was directed by um, Jeffrey Friedman and Rob Epstein.
Yeah.
See, and they're just incredibly kind, wonderful people. And that the people they pick to work with them emanates from that. So everybody on set, except of course the AD, who's mean because they have to be, but everybody else is just super, super kind and wonderful. And same thing with Rabbit Hole. That was I'm sorry, not Stephen Trask. John Cameron Mitchell directed that,
Oh,
who
cool.
was the Hedwig
Yeah.
character,
Yeah.
and it was his first, major directorial project on a project that size. Super stressful for him, but he's just such a kind, genuine person.
Did you tell him your
The same thing.
story about
What's that?
going? Did you tell him the story of how you met Stephen Trask?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, he got a kick out of that. Yeah. Yeah, he was, just everyone on the set was, he was so in, there were moments I remember where he was quite stressed, especially, dealing with the big star like Nicole Kidman and trying to negotiate that. That's one of the big things for a director is negotiating the personalities. And she's very kind and she was very wonderful, but she was also paying for and producing that movie. So
Oh,
that was a big
okay.
deal. That was her
Uh-huh.
production company, Blossom Films. So,
Okay.
there were moments where John Cameron Mitchell just kind of walked over and like gave me a hug and
Uh-huh.
just stood there for a minute, like trying to just decompress a little.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
You're
it's,
huggable. You are
yeah,
huggable.
yeah, I try
Yeah.
to be, quiet and calming and easygoing and
Yeah,
keep the
I
stress
get that
level low.
about you.
Yeah,
Other people that were in Lovelace, it was Amanda, am I saying it right? Seyfried. I just know her from Mean Girls, of
yeah.
course. And yeah, Mamma Mia. But Peter Sarsgaard, Sharon Stone,
Peter Sarsgaard was such a nice guy.
James
And
Franco, Hank
James
Azaria, like
Franco.
it's Chloe
Yeah.
Sevigny, my favorite. Eric
She was really
Roberts,
lovely too. Super, super, super
I
nice.
love
Yeah, I mean
her.
everybody was.
She's
Yeah.
so
Eric Roberts also was in he was in the 1996 Doctor Who movie that our Doctor Who MI centered around. So we also interviewed him for that documentary as well, because he was the bad guy on the 1996 Doctor Who movie. That's the movie. The whole Doctor Who MI movie kind of centers around the writer of the 1996 television movie that was supposed to launch a new series in America. So it's kind
okay.
of a weird little story. There's the old Doctor Who in the 1950s or whatever, long running series on BBC. There's the new one now that we have that's quite popular. Well, in 1996, there was supposed to be a new American series. They were going to really, introduce it to the American public. And they brought out this um, made for TV movie that was shot by the guy who directed our Doctor Who MI movie, Matthew Jacobs. And he uh, he wrote the script and it was a massive flop. It aired the same night as Roseanne Barr. That didn't help.
Oh,
The final episode of Roseanne Barr. but it was also the script had a bunch of issues that the fans did not like. And so that's what that Doctor Who Am I story is about. It's about the
Oh.
director going to the conventions and
Mm-hmm.
meeting the fans he thinks are going to hate him. So it's a really cute, really great movie about fandom and about expectations and our our lifelong dreams. The director also, his father was in the old original Doctor Who series as an actor, so he had
Really?
that in his life
Uh-huh.
since he was a kid, and then he had this opportunity to now write the Doctor Who movie that was going to launch it into America,
Ah,
and it was a flop.
ouch.
So yeah, so it makes for a pretty compelling story in that documentary, Doctor Who Am I?
And it's another kind of movie about a movie, a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we do a lot of meta themes, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Hmm.
We're going to take a short break for these messages. This is Castle Searcy with Santa Fe International Film Festival with Dylan Glockler. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking with Dylan Glockler, cinematographer. I want to make sure everyone knows how to watch Dylan's work. Right now on Hulu and I guess Apple TV, right? You can watch Our America Defining Courage is the episode 25, right?
Hmm. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long is that episode?
I'm not entirely sure. Um, I think
The-
it's about 30 minutes. It's a shorter episode. Yeah, again, it's a documentary about the documentary that we're doing. So it's
And
behind
how
the
do you
scenes.
watch the documentary that you did?
If you want to see the documentary, Defining Courage, it's the URL is definingcourageshow.com.
Okay.
And it's coming to cities all around, but right now on the schedule is Houston, Texas, in May, and then in June we'll be in with very limited theaters runs there. There are particular events in the Japanese American community that are going on in these places. One of them is at the former Jerome Detention Center, where a lot of Japanese Americans were incarcerated, which was near the where a lot of the soldiers were doing their basic training during World War II. So they had soldiers from Hawaii and soldiers from California. And a lot of the soldiers from California had their families incarcerated, and many from Hawaii did not. So all of these guys ended up on the same base together. And the guys from Hawaii were very, low key, having a good time. And the guys from California were super serious and had something to prove, and they would butt heads a lot.
Mm.
So the army eventually took, this is all in the documentary, the army eventually took the Hawaiians to the concentration camp in Jerome so they could see the families in this camp and why, and understand why these California Nisei Japanese Americans were so hard-headed and were so bent on proving themselves. So that's kind of one of the stories that they tell in this documentary, but
Interesting. I'm
among
surprised they
many,
would
many
do
others.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Apparently they were getting in fights and having all kinds of
Mm.
issues. And they figured, if we take a couple of the ringleaders and show them what's going on in these guys' heads, maybe they'll respect them a little more and understand.
Or how about let them out? Really?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yeah,
oh,
there was that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It, it, yeah,
it's a crazy story. Yeah.
and not that long ago, really.
Not that long ago. And yes, and similar things continue to happen over time. So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad you're telling these stories. So when I haven't seen it yet. When I go to the website, I see immersive, I see docu-theater, I see a choir. Like
Hmm.
this is a different model than I've
Yeah.
than I've seen before. And I follow a lot of film, a lot of
Hmm.
performance art. So tell me about how this came about and like
Yeah.
how it even works. Like walk me in through it. Like
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, originally, I think I mentioned it, originally it was presented at a couple of events just as a more or less like a slideshow. And David was telling the story, a script, reading on a script. And people would, some people, families of these Nisei veterans would, be in tears at the end of it. And this was a very basic version. So he started nurturing it, developing it. We shot some more stuff. Started cutting together more stories, and then the live music was created, or the original music was created, and there have been shows where we have uh, incredible artists like cellists who are world class, and a violinist who's playing the Stradivarius 1700 Stradivarius, incredible pianist who went to Juilliard. These are world class musicians, and then choir singers from really amazing voices. Sometimes up to 15 of them, all singing together and doing solos, and so it becomes something much more vivid than just a documentary. Recorded music and stuff is really powerful, but when the people are there, and then at the end of the show the veterans come up on stage, it's really a moving experience, and something we'd like to continue to maybe develop in others, with other stories too, through our nonprofit organization Story Boldly, which is at storyboldly.org.
Like this might be a format that you'll do with other.
Potentially, yeah,
I
we're
mean, it
working
seems
on
really
other
unique,
stories.
I
Uh-huh.
think. I haven't really
Yeah,
encountered.
it's
Yeah.
a little bit like theater, a little bit like
Mm-hmm.
film, a lot like a musical performance. So all these things coming together in just such a unique way. It really is very unusual. I don't think, you know, I've never heard of anything else like, you get TED Talks, which are somebody narrating live with visuals.
Mm-hmm.
You get theater, theatrical production,
I've
but
seen
some of
films
those
that
are
people,
starting to get visuals, projection mapping or things like that.
right, yeah.
And we've talked about doing that. We're looking at ideas for, doing some projection mapping, like we talked about. There's been interest about maybe doing a show at the White House or at Ellis Island. And if we did, a show in a space like the the welcoming center at Ellis Island, I forget what the building's called, but that's talked about in the documentary itself. So if we did that there, there's certain aspects of the building we might be able to map with in 3D, and then project pieces of the story outside of the original, outside of the
Wow.
basic proscenium, which would be really, taking it to another level.
I think you're really onto something with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be fun. We're excited about trying some new things like that.
Do you do projection mapping yourself?
I'm just getting into it, and
Yeah.
I'm very keen to, but yeah, I'm
Uh-huh.
not super experienced with it, but I love the concept, and I've seen some amazing stuff. So
Seem like
yeah,
you'll figure it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love the integration of technology and all that. I've always been very compelled by, the technological aspect of filmmaking. So actually, one of the things I just did to show David, we're always looking at new ideas and stuff. So there's a 3D gaming environment called Unreal Engine, and they have a thing called metahumans where you can take kind of a base human person in 3D, and then you can adjust every little parameter to create any person basically in 3D. So I took
Mm-hmm.
a couple of the soldiers and recreated them in this gaming engine, and made them look like, one of them was Sadao Munimori, the Medal of Honor winner, one of the guys we talk about in the story, and made a version that looked pretty compelling in 3D like him. And then you can do, potentially reenactments, or even, just subtle stuff. But yeah, we're talking about reenactments or other things too, because, just looking for ways to tell the story in a more compelling way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes the reenactments you see are not like they're distracting.
Yeah,
You don't want it to be
yeah, totally.
distracting.
Yeah. That
So,
was my vision for that, was to do something like when we were in Europe, this last time. There's an amazing group of locals who have preserved the vehicles and uniforms of the 442, the Japanese American Regiment of Soldiers. And they do reenactments every year. They go up in the mountains, at the Vosges Mountains, where the battles took place. And they drive these old vehicles up there, and they all kind of go camping and dress up and do ceremonies and things to remember these people that liberated their village. It was these Japanese American soldiers that liberated their specific village during the war. And when I saw that, that we were working on various stories, and I got some drone footage of the trucks driving through the mountains and stuff. And I had this vision of not really reenacting, because we did a little bit of reenacting, like POV reenactment up the hill, running through the foxholes. Me
Mm-hmm.
running through the woods with a gimbal and then trying it handheld and doing various things. But to do just tiny vignettes of super detailed moments, because there are really compelling moments in the story about the Battle of the Lost Battalion, being rescued, and they've been surrounded by Nazis for weeks, and they're buried in the mud, and everybody's been trying to rescue them. And finally, the Nisei are sent in, the Japanese American soldiers are sent in to rescue them. And one of the one of the Texan soldiers who's been laying there in the mud for weeks and is thinking they're not going to make it, sees this figure walk out of the fog, and he's wearing an American uniform, but he looks Japanese, and he's not sure if he should shoot. And the guy walks up and says, "Hey, you got a cigarette?" in perfect English. And he just doesn't know what to think,
Right.
except that he realizes they've been saved.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Great stories.
Yeah, that's
Um,
just one of the many
right.
tiny tidbits of these stories. And again, they're told, some of them firsthand from these veterans, a lot of them through the imagery that
So
we
they're
captured.
speaking on stage,
No,
like,
no, no, no. They're in their hundreds now. So
okay.
all over 100, I think.
But do they attend these live events?
They do, yeah. And
Okay.
when they do, we bring them up on stage and we do a special ceremony.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's most compelling about it, is to see them see their stories told. We
Mm-hmm.
were lucky enough to get one of the soldiers in Europe walking through the battlefield a couple of years
Wow.
ago before he passed. But those opportunities are fleeting now. So,
So if we want to see this live, where should we go
um,
next?
on the
Tour.
definingcourageshow.com website, there'll be lists of the appearances. I mean, the next one is in Houston, May 20th, then Little Rock, Arkansas, June 7th. Those are very limited capacities, so very limited tickets. But after that, they're talking about a big show in Salt Lake City. There's talk about Seattle, Portland for sure. Those are for sure.
So
Uh,
you're like on
Probably.
tour.
Yeah,
But it seems
yeah.
like you could do a residency also, like in a theater,
Yeah, the thing with it is, it's hard to get a big crowd that is outside of the Japanese American community. You have to really sell it to
Mm-hmm.
anyone other than the families and the people that were
Mm-hmm.
directly impacted.
Mm-hmm.
We go to Los Angeles and we sell out two 2,000 seat theater instantly, like in minutes.
Right.
And they went to Hawaii, had to add additional shows just because there were so many people.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to DC, we had a massive theater, the Kennedy Center, and it was decent sales at first, but then it was a little lackluster. But then David got on NPR and talked about it, and it so ended up selling out. So, and that was Veterans Day. So
I
it
would
just
think you would
depends on
agree
the
that it's
place.
the non-Japanese people that
Need to
that
hear the story.
need to hear the
Yeah,
story.
that's exactly what
Yeah.
we all keep saying.
Yeah.
And it's the ones you have to kind of convince to come. And a lot of people find it shocking and compelling and great, but again,
Mhm.
that introduces a whole marketing aspect of, which
Right.
isn't impossible, but it's something it adds an extra element that we have to do
Yeah,
to
well, I
deal
think
with.
the theater element really adds so much to it that makes it
Yeah.
something different, like
Mhm.
something more of an experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
What other stories are like in the works or that you're percolating on for stories both
Well,
ways?
David and I have been working on a ghost story for some time. He's been working on it for years, and I've started contributing over the last couple of years about a family that lives in California that's been, for many years, has been receiving messages, or they were receiving messages on Polaroid. So they would ask a question, and a message would be scrawled on the Polaroid when it would develop. And it sounds far-fetched, but they have thousands and thousands of Polaroids over the years. And the problem is, of course, the Polaroid film has changed and it doesn't work anymore. They still
Mm.
claim to get all kinds of strange things going on
Can
in the
they get
house.
vintage Polaroid film?
We tried that. That
Uh,
was
the
one of the
hip,
things we
the,
just did recently. We
they're
ordered a
fighting the
bunch of,
hipsters for it.
That's what we
Yeah.
did. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We ordered all these different films from different ages and we logged
Uh-huh.
them all, shot them all, and everyone came out flat gray, nothing.
Hmm.
Like it was all expired. But I
Hmm.
did just find an article on Wired the other day. They were talking about possibly somebody's out there maybe making, they may have gotten a hold of the recipes. The recipes were always very secret, the chemical recipes for the Polaroid film. And there was some story about they thought that maybe that original recipe was even lost and nobody even knew what it was anymore. Um, but supposedly, according, I'm in the middle of researching this Wired story that maybe there is some film, some people developing some film out there somewhere. So hopefully,
You're a photographer too, right? I guess it goes hand in hand with,
I do some, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
but just
Not
photography.
a Polaroid photographer, maybe.
No, no. I mean, I would just love to see that, it actually work because I've
Yeah.
filmed in the house and these guys are super genuine, wonderful people, really, you know, amazing guys. I can't imagine it's some kind of scam or anything. It just seems too many people involved over so many years, and nobody's ever revealed, that there's anything fishy going on. But then,
Uh-huh.
I also don't believe in ghosts, so I don't know
Yeah, I
what
was
to
gonna
think.
ask, are you scared though? Do you get the
Mhm.
chills
No,
or
no,
anything?
that's the great thing about it. The ghost is a kind ghost.
Okay.
He actually gives advice to one of the people that lives in the house. There's a younger guy who
Uh-huh.
who has lived sort of a troubled life, and there's more to the story too. There's some very strange things that happen in the end that I don't want to give away that you
Can we
have to
watch
see.
it yet or no?
No, 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 no. It's in
Okay.
early development still.
Okay.
We have years of footage and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just now like compiling the interview logs and all that kind of stuff so we can sort of write it together and come up with an
Uh-huh.
actual story and structure and everything. But it should be a very fun, interesting, little less heavy
Uh-huh.
than the defining courage
Is
story,
it a
but a lot.
movie or episodic or
It
is it gonna be
seems
live?
really well. It seems well, David loves the idea of taking it live. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we'd have to develop quite an audience for it before that. It really lends itself to maybe a 4 or 5 part series because
Uh-huh.
there are key points that are just like, this stuff is happening and then boom, this thing happened. And it's like, whoa, and then this, and then boom. So there are these key moments that we're going to sort of start to develop the story around. If I can just find some time to, start writing out that timeline and the key points and
Uh-huh.
figure it all out.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Is all you work on film? Is film your whole life,
No,
or
I have
do you working on other things?
Yeah, I have a business making marine dock steps for boats. So
Okay.
I work with a couple of people in Florida and we make these
What's that called?
collapsible distant stowaway steps. And
Okay.
it's an
Cute.
amazing new product. We haven't even launched yet. It's basically launching this week.
Okay.
And we have a vacation rental and then you and I have a business we're working on. So
Yep. Wing
yeah,
Bandits.
Wing Bandits. Yeah. So lots
Yeah,
and
so
lots of stuff all the time.
you're a creative, but you're
Yeah.
also a business person,
Yeah.
and but it seems like you're having great success in film, and we have to wrap up unfortunately, but so we find you on Hulu and Apple TV, Our America,
Defining courage.
Defining Courage,
Mhm.
episode 25. We should
Yep.
look up olifilm.org,
Dot
right?
com.
Dot
I think it's
com.
.com. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. .com.
The film collective that's working with youth, Native youth in Olympia, Washington. Tell them about our festival, the Santa Fe
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah.
International Film
Yeah. Wonderful
Festival.
people up there. Yeah.
And what else? We have so many things we can.
My site, dylanglockler.com, has all of my, links to all the stuff that I've worked on. So most of the stuff is on there. Doctor Who Am I?
Yeah.
Really great film on available on various streaming platforms.
And
And
Rabbit Hole we can see, Lovelace
mhm.
we can see
Yeah,
online.
those are readily available.
Can have our own Dylan Glockler Film Festival. Yeah.
Yes. There we go.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'm
Thank
Castle.
you.
This is Film Talk Weekly, Santa Fe International Film Festival. And this is Dylan Glockler. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.